Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. And it's our friend, Tony Pucci. Tony, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Frank, for having me.
Boy, so I was trying to figure this out. It's probably been a little under a year, a little over a year since the last time you were on, because this book seems to have come out quicker than normal. Am I wrong?
It's just about a year.
Is it?
Yes.
That was always your goal, a book a year.
That's right.
Well, not always, right?
No, not 10 years ago.
No. And I was thinking about this, because this is number
9.
Is this number 9 in the Michael Bishop mysteries?
Right.
But it's your...
Right, and then it's the 10th book
overall.
Because of the nonfiction I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would ask the question, but I think mathematically it says you would rather do nonfiction?
No, I'd
or you'd rather do fiction, I should say. Yeah, I screwed that up. You'd rather do
mysteries.
fiction. Yeah, you must really enjoy, after doing this this many times, you must really enjoy writing the Michael Bishop story.
Well, it is engaging, and I find that once I start a book, then it's really part of me until it's done. And there's something valuable in that. I think it gives me a focus, it gives me purpose, and it's really sort of exciting to see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Because as I've explained to you before, I really don't have it all plotted out, and I kind of work the story as I go.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a mystery for me too.
Isn't that interesting?
To work it out.
Do you, because we talked about your process before, do you ever get caught into a trap where you realize maybe I can't spin my way out of this one, or get my way out of this one, or?
Not yet.
Okay, knock on wood. Knock on wood. And I know I've said this before on the program, and I'm not just saying it because you're in the studio. I've said it when you weren't here. I've loved the Michael Bishop mystery series from the very beginning. Do you have a favorite? Or do they all become your favorite?
Well, I would have to say that my favorite is always the most recent book.
Of course. You should be in politics.
I tried.
Well, what I love about this is, and I've said this before, it's a fun, for lack of a better word. I know there's normally murder involved, but it's a fun read. It's not overly taxing. You sit down, and before you know it, you've read so many chapters, and you're really into it.
Right. It's not. They're not very difficult reads, and there are lots of chapters, and then there are breaks within the chapter.
Right.
Because that's how I write. I'm writing in sort of short segments. Or I think of, okay, this scene or this conversation has to take place, and then I'll stop and I'll think about, well, what must happen next?
Yeah.
Where do I need to go? What thread do I need to pick up? And so, they're easy to read. I think anyone who's been to high school would relate to them in some way, because the amateur sleuth is a high school teacher, and so there are lots of situations involving the staff or the administration or students, and Michael Bishop, as the English teacher, weaves in some references to literature. And so I think there's some insights there. Beyond just the mystery, I think there are some lessons.
I agree.
There are some values that come through the books, and I think there's probably a consistency over the years in the kinds of things that I'm trying to say.
When I think it's neat that I get so invested in the characters themselves, which doesn't always work out in my best interest without saying too much. But you do really get invested in as the story unfolds, and I think there is something. We've all been to high school, so there's something there that we can all relate to, at least in some way, I think.
Right. And they find themselves in very typical situations. Not that a murder is a typical situation, but there are other plot lines.
Yes.
In Michael Bishop's life, his personal relationships, and ups and downs in those relationships, and just being able to relate to some of those things. I think it's the kind of book that would appeal to a number of people.
Oh, I totally agree. Now, last time, and I don't like giving away any book, but it was interesting last time and the time before how the stories had to adapt for different reasons. Mm-hmm. So, what can you tell us about this book without giving too much away?
Again, the books can be read independently.
Yes.
So you could just start
I'm glad
off.
you said that because I read them out of order. I think I've said this every time you're on, but I read, I want to say, the first 3, maybe 4 out of order. And I caught something one time that triggered my mind, but it doesn't really, you don't need to go in order.
No, you don't need to go in order. You could pick up this book, Night of Joy, Night of Sorrow, and it's its own story.
Yes.
There's this incident that happens. He's got to figure out who did it, why, and it's self-contained.
Yeah.
But if you've read the other stories, then you're familiar with some of the other characters who are recurring characters, and that adds an element, I think. But it wouldn't detract from simply picking up any particular book and just reading that one independently.
And one thing and I think you alluded to it just a moment ago, you mentioned various books in the book sometimes where the students are learning at that time. And I find that really interesting because I think last time it led me to reread One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Right. So, and there's ones I probably should read that you mentioned that I haven't read, but I like that part to it because it's a way to tie everything together in a tight bow, almost in a way.
Well, when I mention those works of literature, there's a reason for it. It's not just a filler.
Right.
The discussion that the students are having, the reference to a book, whether it's a Scarlet Letter, for example, where, Roger Chillingworth is interested in getting revenge on this man who had an affair with his wife.
Yeah.
And in the story, we find out that the revenge he seeks actually not only destroys the man that he's trying to get, it destroys himself in the process.
Yeah.
So you learn something there, and then that theme relates to what's going on in the book.
Yeah.
That whoever committed that murder, if that was revenge, then they're actually hurting themselves in the process.
Are they all books that you taught, or do you sometimes just made me a favorite book?
No, they're books that I've taught.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with them.
Yeah, I always wondered if it was something maybe you happened to be reading at that time, and you said that would work. I don't know.
Well, actually, I have Michael Bishop talk about books he's reading.
Right.
And he'll talk about, for example, the mystery novels of Donna Leon, who sets all her mystery novels in Venice.
Okay.
And there's this Inspector Brunetti. And I've read all of her books and enjoy them, and so I'll build that in that way.
I see. So a little bit of it's taken from your real life,
right?
Not too much, hopefully. Is it difficult to continue the series when? Well, I know there's been twists and turns and plots, and not in that way, but to try to keep the continuity to make sure. I think you mentioned last time you sometimes go back and reread maybe the last book.
Yes, to go back to make sure that there's some consistency, and I've certainly made mistakes, and it would be a wonderful challenge for someone to try to go through and compile.
One of your former students say, "What about this?"
That'd be wonderful. Contact me, let me know. I'd be glad to correct it. But going back to make sure that dates are correct,
right.
And that that I'm using the names correctly and so on. I do like to go back and reread, especially because I'll take a break now.
Sure.
Won't start another one for a while. The next one will be 2025.
Right. Right.
So there'll be a break in between, and really. It's kind of interesting to go back and reread it because I'll find myself saying, well, I don't remember how I did that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And sometimes some of these twists and turns and the ideas that I get are more like dreams that I'm not really fully sure of what's happening.
Sure.
You know, but it just go where it goes.
When you're in the process of writing, because you say you take a little time off, is it pretty consistently on your mind trying to think of things that you want to put in the book?
It is, and that's a burden in a bit of a way.
Well, I'm sure.
You know, that I'll write one segment, maybe I'll get 300 words a day or 500 words, whatever. But you can walk away from the laptop, but it's still there. Now, where do I go next? And it's always, and I think that's part of what helps make it happen, is that it's in the back of my mind and it's sort of churning there.
Yeah.
And then when I sit down, then we'll figure out what happens.
Yeah, right. And we were joking that maybe one of your former students would look for mistakes, but when you talk to former students that read it, the reaction's always been great, right?
Yes, I think
they have their theories, though, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I think they're happy that I'm doing something constructive in my retirement years.
Sure.
And I think they enjoy the references to the literature. I think they see some echoes of me and Michael Bishop.
Of course.
Probably looking for some echoes of themselves.
Yeah, right. That would be the fun of it, I'm sure. Now, you said, does it take typically the same amount of time for each book? I know some would a little bit different, but is this taken as long as the last one?
They do take about 6 months.
Okay.
Because they're all about 60,000 words.
Okay.
But then after that, you know, after I've finished the text, then there's the revision.
Okay.
And then there's all the technical aspects of getting it uploaded to Amazon, because they're self-published, and you have to do the paperback separately. You have to do the ebook differently, because you have to put in the table of contents and
interesting.
give people the opportunity to zip back and forth between chapters and so on. And so there's a lot involved there. And because I only do it once a year, it's always like almost new.
Yeah,
and I have to
of course.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And then as the author, I can get a proof copy, because I'm just looking at it on a screen, and I'd rather have the book in my hands.
Yeah.
And so I go through the proof copy and I make corrections.
Yeah.
And then I get on the computer and hopefully make all the corrections that I want to make.
Sure.
And this time I actually sent for a second proof copy.
Oh, really?
Because I wanted to be sure
that
things, and I found more mistakes.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
Because I'm it. There's no editor, there's no proofreader.
And you're so close to it, too. Yeah. How many times have we all typed up a sentence and it sounded good? Because in our head, we typed that "the" in there.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so that's
and you think you see it.
Yeah. And isn't that weird how that works?
And it's not there.
We're talking about Night of Joy, Night of Sorrow, the new Michael Bishop Mystery Series book. There it is. I'm like Johnny Carson putting it up in front of the camera here. I'm not like Johnny. I shouldn't have said that. That's blasphemy. You were mentioning ebook. Do you find more people are buying an ebook now than hard copy?
There are a good number that do buy the ebook, especially because it's less expensive and it's easier. I know people read them on their phones. You can read them on a Kindle. You can read it on your computer, your laptop. Once you download it, you don't have to have a Kindle.
Right.
And you can put it on any device. They look a little different depending on what device you're reading it from. But the ebooks are popular. And actually, one of my readers, former students, actually contacted me recently and said, "Well, I wish they were audiobooks."
Oh.
Because I've got this long commute every day, and I would love just to, listen. And I said, well, maybe that's an idea.
Yeah.
And I looked at Amazon at my account, and I'm actually able. The option is there to create an audiobook. And so I've started with book one.
Okay.
Creating an audiobook through artificial intelligence.
That's so creepy.
And so it's very interesting.
How does it sound?
Well, there are 8 voices that you can choose from.
All right.
And so once you've chosen a voice, then for me, the text appears.
Yeah.
And every word is highlighted as the speaker pronounces that word. And you can stop and adjust the pronunciation.
Interesting.
You can stop to adjust a pause. But it's not, it's artificial intelligence, so it's not perfect
Right.
by any means. And so I've learned a lot about how to try to get that artificial speaker
Yeah.
to say it the way I want them to say it.
Sure.
But it's certainly not quite equivalent to what a person would be able to do with it.
That's fascinating, the technology there. But now I've got to ask you kind of the current debate question, especially coming from a former teacher. Is an audiobook, is that cheating? You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Well, personally, I've never listened to an audiobook.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Okay, all right. That's as far as we'll go with that. But we joke about your students thinking they may see themselves in this. Do you pull from real life, other than maybe you said there's maybe some hints of you? Do you pull from real people that you know when it comes to characters?
In some vague ways.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never be able to kind of say, well, this is this person, but there might be some little echo there somewhere. Sometimes it might even be subconscious on my part.
I'm sure.
But when I was doing I'm still in the process of doing that first audiobook. I'm actually in a sense, rereading the
taking
first
it back
book,
in.
which I haven't done for a long time, and I see how different it is and how much progression there's been now to this most recent book. There was no reference to Mayhem and Meanie in the first book.
Is that right?
The sisters,
Yeah.
Sister Anne and Sister Pat were in the book.
Yeah.
But hadn't gotten to the point of using that.
Being a main character, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
And there was no Max, Michael Bishop's little Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, there's reasons for that, though, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the reasons why when I read it out of order, that's one of the things I caught. But that is interesting to think. I would have thought that Mayhem and Meanie would have been a main character from the beginning.
Oh, they are.
They're in it, but
they
not.
weren't. But that phrase wasn't used at the beginning.
Isn't that interesting?
It's really interesting to me to go back and look at that first book, and because that was supposed to be it.
Yeah,
just the one book, and I was going to be done with that, and then I kept moving along with it.
And you said, I know we talked about this last time. I'm going to put, again, up on the screen, the books. You had said the one, what Murder on the Marginal Way, was that the one that's the most popular because of the connection with Marginal Way?
Right. That's the one that tends to sell the most because of the title. The Marginal Way is a very famous cliff walk in southern Maine in Ogunquit Beach. And a lot of people have been there. They're familiar with that area, and they buy the book just based on the title, and they enjoy it because there are a lot of local references.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was something that I wanted to mention too, that I noticed from the first book. I called the town where he teaches Groveland, because I didn't want it to be too obviously, this is Elmira,
right, of course,
and so on. And so I've kept the Groveland throughout because you can't really change that. But what I have done in succeeding books, I've made more and more local references.
Yeah.
So when you go to this current book, Night of Joy, Night of Sorrow, when Michael Bishop goes to a restaurant, I'll be naming restaurants.
Yeah, I've
locally.
noticed that, and that wasn't the case in the very beginning.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Because it was almost like I was looking for it to see if there's that connection, and I remember early on that there wasn't. And then when you saw something that was on my, I go, oh my goodness, that made cut. Yeah.
And I probably should have done that from the beginning.
Yeah.
But you learn.
You grow.
You learn as you go.
That's it. So where's the best place to buy the book? I know you have a new website, AnthonyJPucci.com. Can you buy it on there, or should you go to Amazon?
Well, if you wanted to buy directly from me and get a signed copy, you could contact me at AnthonyJPucci.com.
Okay.
There's a place to do that. You can also email me at michaelbishopmysteries@gmail.com. But if you want to buy the book or the ebook or hopefully the audio
book,
books,
sure. Yeah.
they're on Amazon.
Okay.
And actually signed copies of all of the books are at Millport Landing on Route 14.
And so they have every copy?
They have copies of all 10 books.
Oh, okay. So someone gets done with this and they say, I should have been doing this from the beginning. They can rush there and buy all the rest of the books.
They can.
That's great.
They can. And Margie Hoy, who is the proprietor, she's a wonderful lady. And it's a very interesting shop that she has, full of all kinds of interesting things and crafts and antiques and so on. She always lets me know, well, we've run out of this book, we need more, and I can just run down and bring her more copies.
Oh, that's great. So find out more at AnthonyJPucci.com. I know it's obligatory for me to ask you this. What are you working on next? When's the next copy coming out? 2025?
Yes.
Okay. So right now you're taking a break because this is pretty much fresh off the presses.
Right. And what I'm doing now, the audio book is taking an enormous amount of time.
Oh, I'm sure.
I really wasn't expecting that, but when you think about it, I have to listen and to every word and stop and try to manipulate that pronunciation.
Well, because I was even thinking about it when you've got your GPS and it'll say something like Elmira or something like that. So there are a lot of unique words around here.
Yeah. Well, and there are some things that you just can't change. You really can't change the emphasis on the syllables, as one of my colleagues used to say.
Yes.
And so, like in book 1, which I'm doing, there's Coach Zappala, who's the victim, and the artificial intelligence is not quite saying Zappala, but I got it to be closer.
Yeah.
And then once you get it, you can say apply it to all uses of that word.
Yeah.
All 300 uses of that. So you can do that.
Amazing.
But there were some other simple things like the article it would say a, like a hat instead of a hat.
Yeah.
And so I have to go in and type UH.
That's so tedious, though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I would get the sound I want.
Wow.
To do it phonetically.
So I'm guessing this is going to take you a while to get through all 10.
Oh, it's going to take a long time. Yeah, one at a time.
But find out more again at AnthonyJPucci.com. Well, let's book it for next year. All right?
Sounds
Does
good.
that sound good? Thanks for the copy. I can't wait to read it, and I can't wait to email you afterwards and have the back and forth and get the real scoop.
Good enough.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big 5.